Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into it, trying to understand what's actually in your dog's bowl, our mission. We're looking at insights from the Paw Plate podcast, a great source, and pulling out the key stuff, just trying to give you a clear roadmap for, decoding dog diets so you can make choices that really work for your dog.
Exactly. A roadmap or maybe a shortcut. Because let's be honest, pet nutrition can seem really complicated, confusing even. We're hoping to give you those aha moments, real understanding, but without drowning you in information. The goal is really just to help you get the main things to think about, whether you're using kibble, cooking at home, or maybe you're just curious about raw diets.
Okay, so let's start where the Paw Plate podcast kind of kicks off. What do you feed your dog? And maybe more importantly, why that choice? The source talked about a mix, which sounds practical, like using some high-quality kibble because it's convenient, but also adding in fresh home-cooked stuff for better nutrition and just making it more exciting for the dog. It shows there isn't just one single right answer. And when you're trying to pick the best food, the podcast stressed looking beyond just the packaging. Obviously, you got to read the ingredient list carefully. But they also said look for reviews, specifically ones talking about long-term changes, not just whether the dog liked it at first. And crucially, this is key. You have to watch your dog. How's their energy, their coat, even their poop? It all, as they put it, tells a story.
Oh, absolutely. That observation part, it's critical. Your dog's physical signs are often the best indicators, maybe even better than the label sometimes. It's not just the obvious things like a dull coat. Think about subtle stuff too, like maybe constant ear infections or paw licking, digestive issues. Those can all point to a nutritional thing going on. It's their feedback loop, really.
Okay, something that always comes up, and the podcast covered it too, is the whole grain-free debate. We hear it all the time, grain-free is better. But the source suggested, and vets often say, well, not necessarily. Can you maybe unpack that a bit? Why can't whole grains like brown rice or oats actually be good? What's the common confusion there?
Yeah, it's a really common point of confusion. I think the main misunderstanding is people equate all grains with, say, processed human food grains, or they assume every dog is sensitive. But for most dogs, whole grains are actually great. They provide complex carbs for energy, lots of fiber for digestion, even things like B vitamins. So unless your dog has a specific diagnosed grain allergy, which honestly isn't as common as you might think, taking grains out might actually limit the nutrients they get. The point isn't that grains are inherently bad. It's just that some dogs might not tolerate them well, but it's definitely not a universal rule.
It's interesting, too, how small tweaks can make a real difference. The podcast shared a story about a dog's coat getting shinier and digestion improving just by adding fish oil and cutting out fillers. That sounds like something we hear a lot. Can you explain the science there? Like, what are those fatty acids actually doing, and how does getting rid of fillers help?
Sure. So essential fatty acids, especially the omega-3s in fish oil, they're fundamental for healthy cell membranes. They help reduce inflammation all over the body. That often shows up as better skin and a shinier coat. Plus, they're important for brain function, immune health, pretty much everything. Now, when you cut out fillers, those low nutrient ingredients like maybe some types of corn or soy that might also be allergens for some dogs, you're not just removing something, you're making space in the diet, space for more nutrient-dense ingredients like those good fats. And that allows the dog's systems to get more of what they truly need, leading to those positive changes you can actually see.
Okay, so keeping those factors in mind, let's talk about the main types of food out there. Raw, cooked, and kibble. What's the first thing people need to grasp about the sort of pros and cons of each?
Well, the podcast did a good job outlining these. Kibble, right, its biggest advantage is convenience. And it's usually formulated to be complete and balanced, minimal effort. But the trade-off, like the source mentioned, is that some kibbles might have highly processed ingredients or, artificial stuff you'd rather avoid.
Right, and then you've got cooked food. The podcast said it's generally seen as safer than raw, maybe easier to digest. But yeah, it definitely takes more time. Making sure it's balanced every single time, that's the challenge.
Exactly. And then raw diets. They've become quite popular. People talk about bioavailability, the idea that nutrients are maybe easier for the dog's body to use. But the really crucial thing here, and it often gets missed, is getting the nutrient balance absolutely perfect. Most homemade raw diets, they often lack the precise calcium to phosphorus ratio, for instance, or specific vitamins and minerals. That can actually lead to serious health problems down the line, like bone issues. It's a bigger risk than people sometimes realize. Plus, like the source said, there's the risk of bacteria if it's not handled really carefully.
Yeah, that makes total sense. The hosts even shared their own experience trying to make dog food from scratch. They said it felt rewarding, but wow, it was tricky. Just making sure the dog got enough calcium, enough protein, all the nutrients. It wasn't simple without expert help, like from a vet. Which is why they found freeze-dried meals to be a really good middle ground. You get a lot of the nutritional benefits people associate with raw, but it's safer and way more convenient, almost like kibble.
Freeze-dried is definitely an interesting option. It kind of bridges that gap. You often get better preservation of enzymes and nutrients compared to high heat processing because it's a low temperature drying method, but you still get the convenience and lower bacterial risk of a product that's shelf stable. It really comes down to understanding these differences and figuring out what fits best with your life and, of course, your dog's specific needs.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit. Let's talk about some of the hot topics or controversies in dog food right now. Expert, the FDA's investigation into grain-free diets and a potential link to heart disease, specifically DCM. That's still on people's minds. Our source emphasized being cautious, always check in with your vet before a big lie change. Makes sense. But can you give us a bit more context? What's the investigation actually looking at, and why might certain ingredients be involved? Trying to stay neutral here, of course.
Right. It's a really important area, and the science is still evolving. The FDA investigation isn't saying all grain-free food is bad. It's looking at a potential correlation between certain types of grain-free diets and DCM in some dogs, specifically diets that are heavy in legumes like peas, lentils, potatoes, especially when they're replacing grains as the main carb source. The hypothesis, or one of them, is that these ingredients might interfere with how dogs absorb or use certain nutrients, maybe amino acids like taurine, especially in dogs that might already be genetically predisposed. It's complex, and research is ongoing. It just highlights why we need continued study and an evidence-based view rather than jumping to conclusions.
That's super helpful context, thank you. What about vegan or vegetarian diets for dogs? The podcast basically said, yeah, it's possible, but it's really not easy. They mentioned dogs needing specific amino acids usually found in meat. Nutritionally speaking, why is that such a big deal? What makes formulating a plant-based diet so challenging?
Well, dogs, even though they can eat plants, their evolutionary background is definitely rooted in eating meat. Their bodies are just really optimized to get certain essential amino acids, those protein building blocks, from animal sources. So, while you can technically make a vegan diet work, it takes extreme precision. You have to make absolutely sure they're getting enough of things like taurine and L-carnitine and in forms their bodies can actually use. It usually means relying heavily on synthetic supplements or very specific plant protein combinations. That's pretty hard for the average person to manage correctly without help from a specialist like a veterinary nutritionist.
Got it. Okay, different direction, exotic proteins. The podcast brought up things like kangaroo, venison, bison. They said these could be great for dogs with allergies to common stuff like chicken or beef. Why is that? Why do these novel proteins work so well for sensitivities?
Yeah, it comes down to the concept of a novel protein. An allergy is basically the immune system reacting to a protein it's seen many times. So if your dog is allergic to chicken, which they've probably eaten a lot, introducing something totally new, like kangaroo, that they've never had before, well, their immune system hasn't learned to react to it yet. It hasn't flagged it as an enemy. This often gives the dog's system, their gut, their skin, a break from the inflammation, which helps clear up symptoms like itching or tummy upset.
Makes sense. And lastly, just a quick word on human food treats. The source gave the standard advice. Some are fine, even awesome, like carrots or plain cooked chicken. But they warned strongly, definitely avoid onions, chocolate, grapes, called them deadly stuff. Can you briefly explain why those common foods are so dangerous for dogs?
Absolutely crucial warnings. Those foods, onions, garlic, chocolate, grapes, raisins, contain compounds that dogs just metabolize completely differently than we do. It leads to toxic effects. Onions and garlic, for example, have thiosulfates. These can damage red blood cells, cause anemia. Chocolate has theobromine. It's a stimulant. Dogs process it incredibly slowly. It can cause anything from hyperactivity to seizures, even heart problems. Grapes and raisins, we don't even fully know the exact toxin, but they can cause sudden kidney failure. It's just a basic biochemical incompatibility. So, yeah, always best to be super careful and avoid them completely.
Okay, so knowing all that,
Mm.
how do you actually ensure your dog is getting balanced nutrition?
Yeah.
The Popley podcast had a nice phrase for it. A mix of research rotation and vet-approved supplements. They mentioned specifics like fish oil for the coat, probiotics for the gut. What are those probiotics actually doing in there? And what's the point of rotating foods?
So probiotics are essentially beneficial bacteria. They help support a healthy gut microbiome. That's the community of microbes living in the digestive tract. A healthy microbiome is vital for good digestion, absorbing nutrients properly, and even for a strong immune system. Think of them as tiny helpers keeping things running smoothly. As for rotation, that's a great strategy. Why? For nutrient diversity. Different foods, different protein sources, they all have slightly different profiles of amino acids, fats, vitamins, minerals. By rotating, you give your dog a broader range of these essentials, and it might even help reduce the chance of them developing a sensitivity to one specific ingredient over time.
Right. Okay. And the podcast really hammered home that things like breed, age, activity level matter a lot. Like a senior dog might need joint support in their kibble, maybe lower fat. Totally different from a young, super active puppy. They even shared a story about their own dog's constant itching. Turned out to be a beef allergy. They figured it out using an elimination diet. It just shows how incredibly individual these needs are. Can you quickly explain what an elimination diet actually involves? Why is it so useful for figuring out allergies?
Yeah, the elimination diet is really the gold standard for diagnosing food sensitivities, sometimes called adverse food reactions. Basically, you feed your dog a diet with only one protein source and one carbohydrate source, both of which must be novel, meaning the dog has never eaten them before. Think venison and potato, or kangaroo and oat, something like that. And you feed only that, absolutely nothing else, no treats, no table scraps, no flavored medications, for usually about 8 to 12 weeks. If the allergy symptoms, like itching or digestive issues, resolve during that time, you then start reintroducing old ingredients one by one. When the symptoms return after adding back, say, chicken, you've likely found your culprit. It's methodical, but it's the clearest way to pinpoint exactly what your dog reacts to. Really shows how personalized nutrition has to be sometimes.
Okay, super practical now. Let's say we're actually shopping for dog food. The podcast gave some solid tips for reading labels. Focus on the first 5 ingredients, they said. Look for real, named, meats, chicken, beef meal. Not vague stuff like meat byproducts. Those byproducts can be okay sometimes, but often they're less digestible or lower quality parts, and fewer artificial preservatives is generally better. They also called out some ingredients to often watch out for: BHA, BHT, maybe corn and soy. Again, not necessarily bad for every dog, but common triggers for sensitive ones, right?
Exactly. BHA and BHT, those are synthetic preservatives. There's some controversy around them regarding potential health effects in high amounts. Corn and soy, well, they are very common ingredients and also frequently cited as allergens for dogs. While some forms can be okay, in many foods they're primarily used as cheaper fillers. They might not offer great nutritional value and can cause issues for dogs prone to allergies or digestive upset.
So in choosing brands, the source recommended looking for transparency, companies that are open about what's in their food, and AAFCO approval. And the least favorite, brands with fuzzy labels or, a history of recalls. Makes sense.
Transparency and that AAFCO statement are definitely important points. AAFCO is the Association of American Feed Control Officials. They don't regulate exactly, but they set the nutritional standards for pet foods in the U.S. So when a food says it meets AAFCO guidelines or is formulated to meet the nutritional levels established by the AAFCO dog food nutrient profiles, or that feeding trials were done, it means the product is designed to be nutritionally complete and balanced according to those widely accepted standards. It gives you a baseline level of confidence in the product's quality for your pet's health. It signals they're meeting foundational nutritional needs.
Okay, last big area, vet advice. Do you just trust your vet on nutrition? The podcast host basically said, yes, absolutely, but they also suggested doing your own homework and maybe asking for a referral to a veterinary nutritionist if needed. Why might seeking out that specialist be a good idea, even if you really like your regular vet?
Yeah, it reinforces the value of your vet, but also highlights specialization. Your regular vet is fantastic for overall health, vaccinations, common issues, and general nutrition advice. They're essential. But veterinary nutritionists, they've done years of extra intensive training focused only on animal nutrition. They're the ones to see for really complex cases, severe allergies, kidney disease, diabetes, multiple health issues, or if you want to formulate a very specific home-cooked diet safely. They can create incredibly tailored plans when the standard options just aren't cutting it. It's that next level of expertise for complex situations.
And that pretty much brings us to the end of this deep dive into decoding dog diets. The main takeaway: every dog is different. What works wonders for your neighbor's dog might not be right for yours at all. So the best approach seems to be: stay curious, keep learning, watch your own dog really closely for those signs they're giving you, and definitely work with professionals you trust.
Absolutely. And maybe for you listening, something to think about as you move forward. Based on all this, is there maybe one specific thing, an ingredient, a supplement, a feeding style that you might want to adjust or research more for your own dog? And what deeper questions about their overall health and well-being does thinking about that one change bring up for you? Something to chew on.